Hi, this week in week 4, we're going to be looking at chapter 4. Now it looks like we've got quite a bit of material, and we do, to cover in this chapter. However, you might be happy to hear that there's going to be very little to no math. And so we're going to be looking at the elements in the periodic table. And so your periodic table here, this is what you have in the textbook. I would suggest printing this out to use as you go through homework and through your video lectures. You also will be allowed to use a hard copy of this with nothing else written on it on your next exam. And so you'll learn about kind of what each group or column is, and what each period or row is, and kind of the trends of all of these different elements that make up everything in the world as we know it. You'll also be looking at what we call the subatomic particles. And so those are the items that make up just one atom of an element. And as you do that, you will kind of be looking at where they are physically in the atom itself. And I wanted to highlight something in our chapter resources. When you get to the part this week about electron configurations, you may want to use this resource. Again, this is something you're welcome to print off and use on an exam. This will help you kind of identify where a subatomic particle called electrons will be located in the electron cloud of an atom. Again, those are a couple of items that are in your resources folder for this chapter. We also have the PowerPoint and some worked examples in the resources folder for our chapter. If we go back out to the week, we've got some assignments. We have 4 different interactive videos broken down by introducing the elements of the periodic table, atoms themselves, and what we call the Bohr model, or a 2-dimensional model of very simplified drawing of how atoms might look. We've got something called the Lewis dot structure and valence electrons. Those are pretty important. You're definitely going to want to pay attention to those for the future. Ionization energy and at atomic size, so the actual physical size of each atom. And then something called isotopes. Now, isotopes are really going to come into play again in chapter 5 next week, so you're going to want to pay attention to that as well. Our discussion forum this week looks at UV light and some reactions with UV light. So you'll have a chance to kind of learn about that. We've got a quiz here with orbital electron configuration. And so you'll be watching a couple of Khan Academy videos. And this is going to take you to kind of a 3-dimensional model of what an atom might look like in 3D space. And that resource that kind of had the colorful triangle type of shape that I pulled up in the resources folder, that's where this is going to come in handy. I'm also going to show an escape room quiz for extra credit. You can work through this and then just do the quiz. Again, it won't be required. It'll just be for extra credit. You're welcome to do that. This week's lab, you're going to be using something called a spectroscope for this week's lab. So a spectroscope should be in your kit. It's kind of this black item here. What you do is you look through this hole here and you aim the other end. You'll see there's kind of some slits in it. You aim it at a light source, and it'll kind of break apart the wavelength of that light source. And the reason why this is important is because when you get into that electron configuration and kind of the three-dimensional structure of what an atom looks like and where electrons are, we'll notice that as they move around, they might give off light. And so the first things that you're going to do in this week's lab is to look at household light sources. Now, I want to really be upfront about this. In order to do this lab, you're going to want a fluorescent light. So while this says household light sources, you might have to go to a store, not to buy anything, but just to bring your spectroscope and look up at the light. Because then you're going to use that fluorescent light to calibrate your spectroscope. So as we come down, you'll see that activity 1, you're looking at household lights, but like I said again, you want to use a fluorescent light bulb. If you don't have one at home, probably most stores are lit by fluorescent light bulbs, or maybe your garage might have a fluorescent light bulb in it. Activity 2, again, uses a fluorescent light bulb. These are pretty quick. All you're doing is going to be kind of looking at the color scale within that spectroscope. And then for activity 2, write down some data in your data table and then bring it back home afterwards and type it into your computer for Excel to make a graph. That's going to kind of tell you if your spectroscope is working well, kind of like where you have to line things up at on the spectroscope, so that you can use it for activity 3. Now, activity 3 has you burning different chemicals on different flame sticks. So I'm going to scroll back up and show you what those look like in the image. Here, so we've got these different flame sticks that are pre-coated with different metals on them. And so you'll be using your burner here and very carefully light the end of your stick. And so each chemical that is coated on these sticks should give you a different colored light when it burns. And you can look at that on your spectroscope and you'll see different banding where the colors are on your spectroscope, dependent upon what element it is and where the electrons are in that element. So hopefully that's going to help you with your lab this week. And we are not doing activity 4, so just 1 through 3. So let me go back into our Moodle shelf for this week. So again, we've got 4 different interactive videos. You've got your link to health discussion, a quiz about orbitals and electron configuration. That's that 3D shape, that 3D structure that you'll see that's more realistic about where electrons are around the nucleus of an atom. I'm going to open this extra credit quiz if anybody wants to do it. Your lab, and then don't forget about the homework in Pearson.